What if the person pointing a weapon at you wasn't a foreign invader, but your neighbor? What if the battlefield wasn't across the sea, but right outside your own home? Civil wars are history's darkest mirror. They pit brothers against brothers, children against fathers, neighbors against each other. They don't just fracture nations, they ripple across the entire world. And today, we're diving into 10 of the most brutal civil wars in history. Wars so violent, so transformative, they reshaped the nations that fought them, and the world beyond. And it all begins with a man whose ambition destroyed a republic, Julius Caesar. Rome in 50 BC, still a republic, ruled not by emperors, but by senators in marble halls. But one man's ambition would bring that republic crashing down, Julius Caesar. For 10 years, Caesar conquered Gaul. His soldiers weren't loyal to Rome, they were loyal to him. Back in Rome, the Senate grew fearful, and Pompey the Great, Caesar's old ally, had become his greatest rival. The Senate issued an order: Caesar must give up his army, or be branded a traitor. So Caesar marched to the Rubicon River, the line between loyalty and treason. He hesitated only a moment, then stepped forward. The die was cast. Civil war erupted. Roman legions now fought not foreigners, but each other. Neighbors turned enemies, families torn apart, the republic was bleeding itself to death. For nearly 5 years, Caesar crushed Pompey and the Senate's defenders. When the dust settled, the republic was gone. In its place, the seed of an empire. But fate is cruel. Caesar never lived to see that empire. On the Ides of March, his so-called friends stabbed him to death. The Rubicon wasn't just a river, it was the line that reshaped Europe for centuries. England, 1642. The kingdom is tearing itself apart. Unlike wars of old fought over land or titles, this time, it was personal. At the center stood King Charles I, ruling with taxes and an iron fist. His opponents, the parliamentarians, demanded limits on royal power. Royalists fought for monarchy, parliamentarians fought for the people. The First English Civil War ended with Parliament victorious. The king was taken prisoner. But the royalists rose again, and they were crushed again. In 1649, King Charles I faced his people one last time, on a scaffold. Before a stunned crowd, the executioner's axe fell. A king was dead. For the first and only time, England became a republic. But the republic fractured. Soon, Charles's son returned to claim the crown. The monarchy came back, but never the same. From that moment, Parliament had proven it could check royal power. That balance would shape Britain, and inspire revolutions abroad, including in America a century later. Spain, 1936. A nation divided, its future hanging by a thread. General Francisco Franco led a coup against Spain's Republican government. But when the coup failed, Spain plunged into civil war. Soon, it wasn't just Spain's fight anymore. Germany and Italy threw their support behind Franco's nationalists. The Spanish Civil War became a rehearsal for World War II. In Guernica, bombs rained down from the sky. It was a warning the world ignored. On the other side, volunteers from around the world joined Spain's Republicans. But the Republicans were outmatched. Franco's forces crushed them. By 1939, Franco was dictator. His grip on Spain would last until 1975. The death toll reached 250,000. The Spanish Civil War reshaped modern Spain, and revealed the dangers of unchecked fascism. And within months of its end, the world plunged into an even greater war. America, 1861. A young nation was splitting in two. At the heart of it all, slavery. Southern states seceded, forming the Confederacy. They claimed it was about states' rights, but the right they fought for was slavery. The spark came when Confederates opened fire on Fort Sumter. The Civil War had begun. It was the first modern war. Railroads, telegraphs, and rifles made the killing faster than ever before. Battlefields stretched from Virginia to Tennessee, Pennsylvania to Mississippi. Brother fought brother, more than 600,000 Americans would die. But in 1865, the Union triumphed, the Confederacy dissolved. But the victory came at a cost. President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated days later. The Civil War strengthened the federal government and redefined freedom. But its scars still shape America to this day. Vietnam, 1955. A nation split in two, North versus South. In the North, Ho Chi Minh and the Communists. In the South, a fragile government backed by the United States. At first, it was a civil war, but soon, it became a Cold War battleground. In 1965, U.S. troops landed in force, confident of a quick victory. But America had walked into a nightmare. The Viet Cong fought with ambushes, tunnels, and traps. America had firepower. Vietnam had patience and grit. This was the first televised war. Families watched the brutality from their living rooms. Back home, protesters filled the streets, chanting for peace. After 2 decades of bloodshed, the U.S. withdrew. By 1975, Vietnam was united under communist control. Nearly 3 million people had died. For America, it was a wound to its pride, and a lesson about foreign wars. Vietnam became a symbol of resistance, and a warning never forgotten. Nigeria, 1967. A young nation barely free from colonial rule was already collapsing. The Igbo people of the southeast, persecuted and massacred, declared independence as Biafra. But the Nigerian government refused to let them go. Britain and the Soviet Union backed Nigeria. Biafra was left isolated. Biafra turned to foreign mercenaries and sympathy abroad. But Nigeria used its deadliest weapon, not bombs, but hunger. Television brought the horror into Western homes. For the first time, the world saw war through the eyes of the starving. The images sparked global outrage and birthed a movement of humanitarian aid. The Biafran airlift became one of history's largest relief missions. But aid couldn't save Biafra. In 1970, the state surrendered. By the end, between 500,000 and 3 million people were dead. Most died not from bullets, but from starvation. The Nigerian Civil War proved the most powerful weapon of all can be hunger itself. Korea, 1950. A nation divided by Cold War lines was about to explode. The North, backed by the Soviets, dreamed of uniting the peninsula under communism. The South, supported by the United States, stood against them. On June 25, 1950, the North Korean army stormed across the border. The Korean War had begun. America and its allies rushed to defend the South. China entered the fight, pouring troops into the North. The death toll soared, millions of civilians caught in the crossfire. Entire villages burned, cities reduced to rubble. Nearly 3 million people died. North Korea lost as much as 15% of its population. After 3 years of fighting, the war ended in stalemate. No peace treaty, just a line across the land. North and South Korea remained divided. And more than 70 years later, the war still hasn't truly ended. Congo, 1998. A vast nation rich in minerals became the battlefield for Africa's deadliest war. It began as a rebellion against President Laurent Kabila. But soon, it drew in armies from 9 nations and countless militias. They weren't just fighting for power. They were fighting for resources worth trillions. The war was fueled by greed, and civilians paid the price. Over 5 years, more than 5 million people died. Most were killed not by bullets, but by starvation and disease. Children were forced to become soldiers. Missionaries and aid workers were caught in the crossfire. Congo's rich lands became a curse. After years of bloodshed, peace talks finally began in 2002. By 2003, the war was officially over. But the scars never healed. Violence still haunts parts of Congo today. The Second Congo War earned a chilling name, Africa's World War. China, 1927. A nation caught between two visions of the future. On one side, the nationalists, the Kuomintang, seeking modernization and unity. On the other, the communists, led by Mao Zedong, rallying peasants and workers to revolution. At first, the nationalists had the upper hand. The communists barely survived the long march. But history gave them a second chance, the Japanese invasion in World War II. For a time, nationalists and communists fought together. But when the war ended, the truce collapsed. The Civil War reignited. The Soviets armed the communists. The balance tipped. City after city fell. The nationalists were forced to flee to Taiwan. On the mainland, Mao declared victory. The People's Republic of China was born. The cost? Up to 9 million lives. Families were split forever, some in Taiwan, others in mainland China. And even today, the war's shadow lingers. Taiwan and China remain divided. One unresolved civil war still holds the potential to spark another global conflict. Russia, 1917. A vast empire crumbled under the weight of war, hunger, and revolution. The Tsar was gone. In his place, the Bolsheviks seized power. But their rule sparked fury. Monarchists, liberals, and moderates united as the White Army. The Reds and Whites plunged the country into years of brutal civil war. Foreign powers joined in: Britain, France, Japan, even the United States. But the Bolsheviks were ruthless, disciplined, and determined to win. Villages burned, famine spread, executions became routine. Between 7 and 12 million people died, most of them civilians. By 1922, the Reds had crushed their enemies. Out of the ashes, a new empire was born. It was called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the Soviet Union. The Russian Civil War didn't just decide one nation's fate. It created a superpower that would dominate the 20th century and shape the Cold War. The Russian Civil War proved the deadliest of them all, turning a revolution into an empire that changed the world forever. Civil wars aren't just battles in history books, they are warnings written in blood. They show us what happens when nations fracture, when ambition outweighs unity. From Rome to Russia, from America to Africa, these wars changed the course of humanity. They remind us that the deadliest enemies are not always across oceans, but sometimes right next door. And when that happens, the whole world feels the shockwaves. History's civil wars scarred nations forever, but they also remind us why unity is worth fighting for.